On my 84th birthday in the nursing home dining room, I stared at my address on a screen with a bright red sold tag. Mark, my eldest son who held my power of attorney, had signed the papers. My hands went cold around the plastic fork. I wasn't dead. I wasn't even quiet. I wasn't going to sit still. Ever been pushed aside at your own table? If you want the rest of this, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. That Tuesday I woke to the hiss of the oxygen line and the warm smear of sun on the wall clock. Breakfast came sliding on a tray, and the cupcake from last night still sat by the water cup, wax stuck to the frosting where the candle had leaned. The room smelled like disinfectant and warm toast. Maria came in with her quiet shoes and a folder under her arm. Maria was the aide who always tucked the blanket tight and asked about the mail without making a joke. She reminded me of my daughter when Lisa was younger and still called to ask how to make stew. Maria set the vitals cuff on my arm and watched the numbers climb. "You slept a little," she said. "Proud of myself," I said. My voice sounded like an old hinge. She hesitated, then slid the folder onto the tray. "They gave me this to file. I thought you might want to see it first." I looked down. A printout from a property listing site. My address. A photo taken in clean spring light I hadn't seen. The lawn was too short. The porch looked naked without my flag. On the right, a red rectangle. Sold. Under it, closing date, June 12, 2025. There was a number I couldn't ignore. $480,000. My throat tightened. I set a finger on the paper to keep it from sliding. It felt like holding down a fish. "Who sent you this?" I asked. "Social worker," she said. She said the family trust needed to keep copies. Family trust. It landed like a metal lid clanging shut. I swallowed. "Thanks for bringing it first," I said. "I'll give it back." She nodded, nervous, and checked the oxygen monitor. Her eyes flicked to the door. She left me with the screen and the cupcake. The frosting had a groove like a tire track. I wanted to laugh. Maybe Mark could sell the cupcake too. As is, needs work. I pushed the paper aside and pulled my flip phone. It still had weight. I liked that. It connected me to something that didn't move unless I said so. I scrolled to Mark's name and pressed call. While it rang, I felt that old ache behind the chest bone, the one that showed up in January when the cold bit the lungs and in summers when I kept too much to myself. He answered on the second ring. "Dad, happy birthday. How are we feeling?" "We." I stared at the listing. "We are feeling curious," I said. "Who sold my house?" "Okay," he said, a little performance in the word. "Let's slow down. Everything is under control. We talked about safety. Remember?" I looked at the photo again. I remember the porch I rebuilt after the winter storm. I remember the screws, because I paid for each one. "I don't remember signing away the front steps." "It wasn't like that," he said. I could hear the clack of a keyboard. It was a transfer. For management. The trust closed on June 12, 2025. I was here on oxygen June 12th. My thumb rubbed a dent in the table. "Who held the pen, Mark?" "It's not helpful to go down that path," he said. "You were evaluated. We made necessary calls. The plan is working." I felt heat in my neck. "What plan?" "For your care, Dad. The home, the meds. This is expensive. You know costs. Medicare doesn't cover the world. He was right about costs. He was wrong about who gets to pay." I had carried a mailbag long enough to know the weight of people's lives in envelopes. Bills. Love. Bad news. The house key floated up in my mind, the cold click in the lock every night. I let the silence sit long enough that he filled it. "We're visiting soon," he said. "Lisa's bringing a card. Tom wants to set up your TV so you can stream. You'll like that." "I'll like my porch," I said. "That's not productive." He used productive on me like I was a direct report. I almost laughed. For a second I saw him at 12, cheeks red from mowing, asking if $5 was fair. I had handed him 6. We stood inside that moment. Then the call broke it. "You signed a power of attorney, Dad," he said, lower now, like a foreman trying to keep the crew in line. "I'm doing what it allows." For your good. You ever deliver letters to people who didn't want them? I asked. I did. I still knocked. Dad, I never sold their houses to make the route shorter. He exhaled into the microphone. Stop. This is hard enough. For who? I asked. For all of us, he said, and ended the call. The screen went dark. I felt empty and too full at once. My hand shook, just once, like my muscles wanted to throw something. I didn't. My father raised me, not to break what wasn't mine. That thought landed hard. I slid the listing back into the folder and tucked it under the tray. My hands found the cane leaning against the bed. I didn't need to stand. I needed to think. You ever had your own kid call you a burden without using the word? It feels like a slow shove. You don't see the hand, but you feel the wall on your back. I pushed the call button. The light above the door came on. Maria stepped in. She watched me like she already knew the answer. Do you know who I should talk to about this? I asked, tapping the folder. She closed the door behind her with a soft click. The counselor, she said. Ellen. She handles forms. She's not like the others. She listens. Can you get me 10 minutes? I asked. I can try, she said. Her face did a quick thing between fear and resolve. I'll tell her it's routine. As I waited, I stared at the cupcake. The candle left a crater. I touched the wax ridge and remembered the old kitchen light over the table at home. That memory pulled me into another one. A January, when Mark was 6 and came home with a note from school about a class party. He wanted a store-bought cake. We didn't have the extra that month. I baked one from a box and frosted it with a knife. He ate 2 slices and said it tasted better. Little boys can tell the truth without trying. Grown men learn around it. Ellen knocked and came in with a leather folder and the kind of steady eyes that made you breathe normal. She sat in the chair by the window and kept her coat on like she meant to be quick. Maria said, "You needed clarity," she said. "I need my house back," I said. My voice surprised me. I sounded like someone who still expected to get what he'd paid for. Ellen nodded once. "Let's start with what you've seen." I pulled the printout. Sale date June 12, 2025. $480,000. My address. A trust I didn't understand. A signature I don't believe is mine. She tapped her pen on the folder. Do you recall signing a power of attorney? I recall signing something after a fall in late winter. I lifted the cane. I recall a nurse saying I was lucky. I recall a fever. I don't recall closing on my own front door. Ellen opened her folder. She slid out a copy of a document on thick paper. The signature line looked like mine on a windy day. A notary stamp sat crooked near the bottom. The date read February 28, 2025. I can request a capacity evaluation, she said. If it says you were able to decide, we have a path. If it says you weren't, we have another. Both paths lead away from here, I said. The words came before I checked them. They sat between us and made sense in the quiet. Ellen breathed in. I'll file for a review, she said, and an examiner will need to meet you. If there's a guardianship in place, we can petition to modify it. Guardianship, I said. The word tasted like the key that never turned. She leaned forward. Do you feel clear today? Clear as I get, I said. I know my address. I know my bank. I know my kids. Voices. We'll need something that shows your ordinary signature, she said. My passport, I said. Top drawer at home. In the desk my wife hated. She smiled at that small edge of humor. We can't get to your desk yet, but we can look at your social security card on file and your voter registration. I nodded. The paperwork stack climbed in my head like stairs. Do you think I'm overreacting? I asked. No, she said. I think you're reacting. When she left, I watched the door for a long breath. Hope is a risky thing at my age. It shows up fast, and if it runs, it takes half your heart with it. Still, it took a chair. The phone buzzed again. Lisa, this time. My daughter, who always softened the sharp corners with kind words and a different schedule. "Dad, happy birthday," she said. I could hear traffic. Lisa never called unless she was moving from one thing to another. "Thanks," I said. "You get the flowers?" she asked. "Mark said he sent—" "I got a printout," I said. "The house." Silence rolled through the line, thin at first, then thicker. "It's for the best," she said. "You fell. You could fall again." "I don't want to get a call at 2 a.m. saying you could get a call saying I need my porch light changed," I said. "You could get that call, too." "I'm trying to be practical," she said. Her voice put on a sweater I didn't ask for. "We're not young. You need care. I need to be asked," I said. "That's not fair," she said, and I almost laughed. Fairness had left the parking lot a long time ago. "Lisa," I said, "careful. I'm going to have the papers looked at. If it's all in order, we can talk about what's next. If it isn't, I want my key." "That sounds adversarial," she said. "It sounds like English," I said. She exhaled the way she did when her boys fought over the tablet. "Okay, let me know what Ellen says." She hung up, and I sat there, a little empty again. When Lisa was 8, she carried home a library book and read it aloud to me while I fixed a hinge. Her voice had slipped around the big words until they made sense. She made everything sound gentler then. Now her words carried Mark like a shadow. That hurt more than the paper. At lunch I pushed peas around and watched the wall TV show a man in a suit talk about housing prices. He smiled like bad news tasted sweet. My tray smelled like salt and heat. The peas made a little tone when they hit the plastic rim. I wasn't hungry. I ate anyway. I used to tell the carriers to drink water in August, even if they didn't feel dry. You keep moving by habit sometimes. Maria stopped by and set a small envelope on the tray. "Don't ask where I got it," she said with a half smile. "Return address is your old block." From Harold. Harold had been my neighbor for 20 years. A veteran. He once fixed my mower just to prove he could do it with a dime. The envelope was thin. I slid a finger under the flap. Inside was a glossy photo. My porch. A red sign stuck in the lawn. His pen scratch on the bottom. "Thought you should see this, buddy." Something steadied in me. Not anger, not even grief. Just a line I could walk. I turned the photo over and wrote, "June 12th, 2025, on the back. My hand came out cleaner than I expected. The pen felt good. You know that feeling when you finally find the right wrench? It snaps in. That afternoon, Ellen came back with a calendar page and a short stack of forms. She set the calendar down like a card shark about to win. "Capacity exam on July 2nd, 2025 at 10 a.m., she said. "A psychologist from the county. I can be present if you want." "I want," I said. The date sat in my chest like a tack. It hurt, but it held the paper where I needed it. "Also," she said, sliding a single-page printout forward, "I requested a copy of the deed transfer. It should arrive tomorrow or the next day." "Will it have a signature?" I asked. "Yes," she said, "and a notary stamp. We'll compare." I pictured my pen in someone else's hand. I felt heat, then a cool flow of something like relief. Facts are a kind of water. They don't care who believes in them. They run where they need to. "You're quiet," Ellen said. "I'm trying not to say something I'll regret," I said. She nodded, like she'd spent time inside that same room. "One more thing," she said. "Don't confront him again yet. Let the paper come to us. Let the examiner do their job." I smiled a little. "You're telling a mailman to let the mail arrive." Her mouth softened. Fair point. When she left, I set Harold's photo under the cupcake plate to keep it flat. I rested my palm on the plate for a second. Warm. I thought of my wife's hands coming in from the yard with tomatoes, the way she'd lined them on the counter like trophies. She would have told me to fight clean, and to fight once. It made me breathe easier. The TV droned on about interest rates. Someone once told me old men talk about the weather because nothing else changes. That person never dealt with adult children and a notary stamp. Plenty changes. Fast. My phone buzzed with a text. Tom. My youngest. The one who said, "Sure, Dad," even when he didn't mean it. Hey, the text read, "Mark says you're upset. Just hang in there. We got you." I stared at the screen until it blurred. I typed back slow so I wouldn't break my own rule about saying things I'd regret. Tom, I wrote, did you know the date of the sale? The bubbles popped up. Stopped. Popped up again. I don't know dates, he wrote. I was just helping. I thought it was temporary. Temporary. People use that word when they want to move you while you're asleep. I put the phone face down. I didn't trust my thumbs. By late afternoon, the hallway quieted. The carts were back in the storage room. The light came through the blinds in tidy bars. I pulled the folder to my lap. I touched each piece again. The listing, the number, the date, Harold's photo, the appointment card. Each object carried a little weight. Not heavy, but present. It pushed back against the lie that I was light enough to lift without asking. I called the front desk and asked for a ride to the small meeting room near the lobby. Ellen had said she could meet me there tomorrow to go over questions for the examiner. The clerk said sure. Her voice had that cheerful brightness people use when they don't expect a fight. Good. I didn't want to give one. I wanted to show up with a bag of letters and say, "Here, read." Before dinner, Maria came in and checked the oxygen again. She looked at the cupcake on the tray. "You didn't eat it," she said. "I don't trust gifts that come with a waiver," I said. "A little dry." It made her snort, quick and quiet. "Do you want coffee?" she asked. "You bet," I said. "The kind that tastes like cardboard." She smiled. She brought me a paper cup. It was exactly as bad as I wanted. I took a sip and let it sit on my tongue. If you can taste a small thing, you're still here. I thought about Mark, about the way his voice had changed years ago when he started introducing me as my dad, the retired mailman, like the title explained me and dismissed me in one breath. He had built a business out of being the loudest in the room. I had built a life out of being the man who shows up whether it rains or not. We both had skills. Mine didn't require a microphone. I checked the clock. The afternoon thinned. My chest felt heavy and then normal. 2 breaths at a time. I pressed my thumb against the edge of the deed printout again, like it might give. It didn't. Paper can take a lot before it tears. One more thing before I end this piece of it. If you ever found out something like this at your own table, what would you do first? Hit like if you've been pushed to the side before, and leave a line so I know I'm not the only one. I set the folder under the pillow when I lay back. For the first time in months, I felt like I had a clock I set myself. I closed my eyes and pictured the porch light. It was on. I could see the glow on the steps. Tomorrow we would ask for the deed copy. Tomorrow we would mark the questions on the calendar. Tomorrow had a shape. That was enough to sleep. And then I heard the rattle of a cart and a soft knock. Maria slipped a small envelope through the crack with a single line on it. "From Ellen," she whispered. I sat up, tore it, gently. Inside was a copy of the notice for the review and a yellow sticky note with one sentence in her neat hand. "Don't answer calls from unknown numbers tonight." I felt the words land. I slid the paper under my palm, felt its simple push against my skin. The phone lit anyway, a 10-digit number I didn't know. I watched it ring until it stopped. Then I set the phone face down, slid the folder closer and waited for morning. The next morning, the envelope from Ellen sat under my tray like a small weight. I slid it out with the same care I used to open registered letters at a front door. Inside was a copy of the deed transfer. County clerk stamp, a name I didn't recognize on the buyer line. Maple Row, LLC. The notary block leaned crooked again. The signature looked like me if my hand had been on a moving bus. I traced the loop on the F in Frank with my thumb. I always made the F like a flagpole with a short top. I learned it in 8th grade and never changed it. My wife used to tease me for never dotting the I in Miller. This one had a pretty little dot over the I, like a school practice sheet. My stomach sank and then steadied. Pretty was not the same as true. Maria poked her head in with my morning pills and saw the paper. She came in and closed the door with her hip, like she did when she didn't want a hallway voice drifting in. "Is that it?" she asked. "It's it," I said. "Maple Row, LLC. June 12th, 2025. Notary out of town." She leaned over the tray, squinting, then looked up at me. "You want me to find Ellen?" "Yes," I said. My throat was dry. "And a glass of water I don't have to argue with." She smiled and went to get her. My chest felt heavy for a second. Then, lighter. Seeing a thing named takes some of the shaking out of your hands. It also gives you a target. Ellen came in with her leather folder and that quick, focused walk that said she had 10 places to be, and chose this one. She put on reading glasses and studied the page, then pulled a copy of my prior signature from a form the facility had on file. "Look," she said, putting them side by side. "Your Miller has a sharp angle on the M. Here it's rounded. And here," she tapped gently, "the I is dotted. You already noticed." I nodded. "I haven't dotted an I since 1971. She didn't smile. She turned the deed to the notary section. "This notary is from out of county." "Possible, but we'll ask for the journal entry. Also, Maple Row LLC links to a registered agent downtown. We can pull the base filing. Sometimes the agent is a friend of someone who shouldn't be a friend." Her words were dry. I liked that. Clean steps, not fog. "Can we request the notary journal?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "We'll do it through the ombudsman, so it carries a little weight." That word again. Ombudsman. I had never said it out loud before yesterday. Now it felt like a key cut I hadn't needed until someone changed the lock on me. She slid a simple form in front of me. "This is a formal complaint to the Long-Term Care Ombudsman's office. It isn't a lawsuit. It's a request to review whether your rights are respected. You're asking to confirm your capacity and to examine the financial actions taken in your name." "What happens after I sign?" I asked. "They contact the facility, your listed agent, and your family," she said. "They also put a note in your file that says, 'Do not restrict communication without cause.'" I thought about how quiet the phone had been until it wasn't. I picked up the pen, my hand held steady. I signed my name with my sharp M and my undotted I and felt like I had just knocked on a door after a long snow. I slid the paper back to her. "Thank you," she said. "I'll fax an email." Paper and pixels. That way no one can pretend it didn't arrive. "You'd make a good mail carrier," I said. She almost smiled. "I like things that show up." She left to file it. I sat with the deed copy and watched the second hand on the clock, and waited for the phone to do what phones do when you poke at the hive. It didn't make me brave. It made me patient. There's a difference. Patience is a choice you make so you don't say something stupid at the wrong time. Around noon, the social worker stopped by. She re-anchored herself in the doorway with that careful tone people use when they assume the storm has passed. "I heard you requested a review," she said. "I did," I said. "Okay," she said. "That's your right." There was that flat way some staff said right, like a piece of ice. Cold. Slippery. It told me more than her words. People were adjusting to a new weather report. I didn't feel triumph. I felt watched. It made my back stiffen a notch. Right after she left, my phone buzzed. "Mark." I let it run 2 rings to collect myself, then answered. "Dad," he said, skipping hello. "Why did you file with the ombudsman?" "Because I read a deed with my name on it and didn't recognize the hand," I said. My eyes stayed on the part that said Maple Row, LLC. "You're making this adversarial," he said. "We moved fast because the market moved. Maple Row, LLC is a holding company. It's standard. Who owns Maple Row, LLC?" I asked. He paused almost nothing, then said, "A partner of mine." There it was. He put the door on a hinge. I didn't have to kick it. "So you sold my house to your business partner," I said. "It's in the family, Dad," he said, like I should give him a thank you card. "It keeps things clean. We didn't want strangers in there." "You didn't want me in there," I said. My hand dampened around the phone. "That's the stranger you kept out." "You're turning this into a story," he said. "It's a plan. You fell. You need care. The trust pays for care." "How much?" I asked. "What?" "How much does the trust pay per month?" I said, slow. "Say the number." "It will pay what's needed," he said. "Don't." How much did Maple Row pay? I said, tapping the $480,000 line. And how much is drawn each month? He exhaled in a short burst. Around $8,000 monthly for the facility, he said, crisp now. Sometimes more. Do you have any idea what Medicare covers? Half the time I'm on the phone with billing because You've been busy, I said. Dry. I couldn't help it. He missed the weight in my voice and kept going. This is a lot, he said. Your Social Security check covers a fraction. We need the trust. I looked at the number again. $480,000. My mind did a quick, ugly math. $8,000 a month. At that rate, the cash from my house would run to zero sooner than my lungs. If that was the real draw. If. You could have called me, I said. You were sick, he said. We did what needed doing. What needed doing was asking, I said. He went quiet. Then he said, here's what we'll do. I'll email you the updated consent forms. Same content, clearer language. You'll feel better. Send them to Ellen, I said. She's not your attorney, he shot back. She listens, I said. That's not a credential, he said. Neither is oldest child, I said. We both stopped. The line hummed. I heard him put a lid on himself. That always made him sound older and colder. If this goes to some kind of audit, he said, we can't undo it. Buyers get spooked. Deals unwind. It makes you look unstable. It makes you look busy, I said. Dad, he said, low now. Like a warning in a parking lot, don't make me the enemy. You're making yourself, I said, and ended the call. My hand shook after I put the phone down, not from fear, from the pure effort of not saying all the words in my mouth. You ever put a note in your pocket so you don't hand it to the wrong person? I was doing that with my tongue. A minute later, my email pinged on the old tablet Harold helped me set up last year. 2 PDFs. Updated consents. I opened the first and scrolled. The date line was blank. The notary block matched a stamp from June with a different commission number than the deed. The language slipped around the words in a nicer font. I felt a twist of dark humor at the way people think better fonts make better news. I forwarded both to Ellen with a single line. From Mark. He calls these updated. Ellen wrote back 5 minutes later. Do not sign. The notary commission on page 2 doesn't match the state database. We'll add this to the packet. I set the tablet down and let the air I'd been holding out of my chest slow. The first crack for Mark was not the deed. It was the notary number. That's how people actually lose control. Not in the big speech, but in the lazy detail. Maria came in to refill the water and saw my face. It got loud? She asked. Quietly, I said. He sent more forms. Ellen says they don't add up. She nodded like she'd expected that. Then she leaned closer. I called my aunt. She whispered. She works at the ombudsman's office. She said a reviewer can come by tomorrow or the day after to talk to you, and they'll log a formal case number once they speak to you. It's faster than waiting for letters. Good, I said. A slow relief moved through me. If we'd been at the DMV, this was the moment the ticket number finally jumped on the board. She touched the back of the chair and then let go. I didn't tell her more than your name, she said. I know lines. I know lines too, I said. Thank you. After lunch, I walked the hallway with my cane, counting steps because I needed something to add up. A couple of aides glanced my way and lowered their voices. It wasn't cruel. It was cautious. Word travels faster than food in places like this. I passed the bulletin board with the paper stars and a photo of last month's birthday group. My name was on a blue star. The edges curled. I reached out and pressed it flat with my thumb. It didn't stay. Ellen found me in the small meeting room by the lobby, where they kept stale magazines and a plant that was either very brave or very neglected. She set her folder on the table and laid out the deed copy, the consent PDFs, and a one-page print of the Maple Row LLC registration. Registered agent is a law office that handles lots of small LLCs, she said. Normal enough. But the mailing address for Maple Row matches a suite where your son's partner rents space. We'll keep that in our notes. Also, the commission number on the consent notary is for a notary who expired last year. That's a problem for them. Does this become police? I asked. Not yet, she said. This is still a capacity and rights issue. If the evidence points to fraud, we refer to the county attorney. For now, we stay on our line. I appreciated how she said, for now, like a soldier drawing a map. I nodded. She slid over a half page with 6 questions. These are standard for the capacity reviewer tomorrow. They'll ask you who the president is, what day it is, where you are, things like that. Then they'll ask you to explain in your own words what you want. I want my key, I said. That's a good answer, she said. Add that you understand risks. They listen for that. I took the page and read the questions. My hand felt steadier just having a list. When will they come? They said, July 2nd, 2025 at 10 a.m., she said. If they can move faster, they'll call this afternoon. Answer if it's a local number. I nodded. If it's a 10-digit number from nowhere, I let it ring. Exactly, she said. You're trainable. I was a foreman from time to time, I said. On the quiet routes. She laughed a little. Then the laugh died when my tablet dinged. New email. From Mark. Subject line, family plan. I didn't open it. I pushed the tablet across to her. She read, skimmed, and then slid it back. He's doubling down, she said. He wrote, Dad is comfortable. We have care managed. This review could disrupt care planning. And he CC'd Lisa and Tom. He wrote that to you? I asked. Yes, she said. He included you too. I let out a breath through my nose. There was the second crack. He didn't CC me to include me. He CC'd me to intimidate. It landed wrong. It made me stubborn. Can I write back? I asked. You can, she said, but keep it simple. 1 line. I requested the review. I will speak for myself. I typed that line with my undotted I and sent it. It felt good, like lifting a weight that was the right size for my age. When Ellen left, I sat a few minutes and let my mind touch the past, so the present would make sense. Seeing the clean print of Maple Row dragged me back to the day Mark came home from college and told me, with a kind smile I mistook for respect, that the world moved faster now, and ink was old-fashioned. I had said, ink stays. He had patted my shoulder like I needed comfort. That was one of the first cracks. Not a fight. A tone. If I had named it then, maybe this would be different. That memory still burned when I heard a step and looked up. Maria stood in the doorway with a sticky note in hand. Call came in, she said. Local number, county office. They'll be here tomorrow at 10 a.m. like Ellen said. And they gave a case number. She read it off. I didn't need to memorize it. I just needed to hear it existed. Thank you, I said. My chest loosened another notch. It's strange how a number on a yellow square can make your spine feel taller. On my way back to the room, I passed the TV area. The news was on about Medicare audits. A man in a suit said something slippery about care coordination. I almost laughed. Everybody wants to coordinate you as long as you don't pick the music. Back in my room, I set the deed copy and the case number sticky on the tray. I took a slow drink of water and called Harold. He answered on the second ring with his usual, "Yeah?" "It moved," I said. "We have a complaint in. County is sending a person. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. "Good," he said. In the background, I heard a radio low. "Want me to bring anything?" "Bring your eyes," I said. "And that old property map you showed me once, if you can find it. The one with lot lines." "I know where it is," he said. "You bet." We were quiet. Then he said, "You want to say anything I shouldn't hear?" "No," I said. "I'm done saying things that feed the wrong person. I'm saving it for the one with a badge, or whatever they wear." "Clipboard," he said. "They wear clipboards now." I smiled. "See you tomorrow." I clicked off and lay back for a minute. My body told me I was still 84. My head told me I was not done. I drifted for a couple minutes and woke to the phone buzzing again. "Lisa." "Dad," she said, soft. "Mark says you filed something official." I did, I said. This is going to make things complicated, she said. They were already complicated, I said. This makes them honest. Tom is worried, she said. He thinks you're mad. I am many things, I said. I'm clear. She was quiet a beat. Please don't attack Mark tomorrow, she said. Lisa, I said, cutting in, gentle. Tomorrow a county person will ask me questions. I will answer them. Mark doesn't get my answers first. She took a breath. Okay, she said. Okay. When you see Mark, I added, tell Mark that Maple Row LLC is not a warm blanket, it's a mask. And masks come off. She didn't respond to that. She said she'd call later and hung up. I sat with the tablet, tempted to open the family plan email and tear it apart line by line. I didn't. Instead, I opened the calendar and tapped July 2nd, 2025 at 10 a.m. The square turned blue. It felt like putting a flag on a hill I could reach. Dinner came. Meatloaf that tried hard and gravy that gave up. I ate half, because you don't go into a day like tomorrow on an empty tank. I wrote a list on the back of Harold's photo. Ask about Notary Journal. Ask who owns Maple Row. Ask about capacity standards. Ask to add, no restriction on calls, note. Seeing it in my hand made my heart slow, steady. It hit me then, quiet and heavy. This wasn't just about a house or a signature. It was about my son talking to me like I was a problem to solve. We had shared so many Saturdays at the hardware store when he was little. He used to hold the screws and count them out loud. One for you, one for me, one for Mom. Somewhere along the way, he started counting without me. That thought hurt in a clean way. It didn't throw me, it anchored me. Maria knocked before lights dimmed. She checked the oxygen and glanced at the paper stack. You ready? She asked. As I get, I said. You'll be here at 10 a.m.? I'll be near, she said. If they ask me what I see, I'll tell them what I see. That I steal extra pudding, I said, dry. She smiled. That you read everything. After she left, I spoke one line to you like we're sitting in a diner with poor coffee and a good waitress. If you ever had to choose between keeping peace and keeping yourself, which one did you pick? If you think I'm doing the right thing, hit share so someone else hears it. I turned the lamp off and left the hallway lights spilling a soft line under the door. I slept in pieces and woke to the phone lighting up with another email from Mark at 6:12 a.m. subject, choice. I didn't open it. I wanted paper, not screens. At 8 a.m. there was a knock on the doorframe. The social worker stood there with a message slip. County called, she said. They moved the reviewer up. Today at 10 a.m. in the small meeting room, I thanked her. She lingered like she wanted to add a script, then left. When she was gone, I folded the message slip and slid it behind the deed copy. That way, my hands could find both without hunting. At 9:15 a.m., Ellen stopped by with a small spiral notebook. If you drift, she said, tapping it, look at your own words from last night. Sometimes nerves make people overtalk. Short answers win. Short is what I've got, I said. She re-anchored herself near the door. You'll do fine. Remember, you don't have to prove your education or your memory of high school. You just have to show you understand your choices now. I understand my porch, I said. I want my porch. We'll put that on a sign, she said, and left. At 9:30 a.m., the phone buzzed with a text from Tom. I'm outside, he wrote. Can I come up? I stared at the message. Tom avoided conflict the way cats avoid bathtubs. If he was here, something was pushing him. Come, I wrote. 10 minutes later, he stood in the doorway, hat in hand, looking like a man about to apologize for something he didn't do. Hey, he said. Hey, I said. He came in and sat on the chair by the window. He looked at the deed copy but didn't touch it. Mark is mad, he said. Mark is loud, I said. Tom rubbed his face. He said if you keep pushing, the buyer could sue, he said. He said Maple Row is clean. Tom, I said, who owns Maple Row? He blinked. Mark's friend. You know. The tall one. So he sold my house to his friend, I said. That's what we call a conflict where normal people live. Tom nodded like his neck didn't want to take orders. I didn't know all this, he said. I thought it was just paperwork. "You see me," I said. "Look at me. Do I look like paperwork?" He met my eyes. He looked away. "No," he said, small. "Then tell Mark that," I said. "Not for me. For your own spine." He gave a short, pained laugh. "You always do that," he said. "Tell me to stand up without telling me what to say." "You're 45, I said. "You can pick a sentence." He nodded. He stood. He reached for the deed copy, then stopped his hand and stuck it in his pocket instead. He looked like a boy again for one breath. Then he left. At 9:55 a.m., I took the cane and stood. My legs felt steady. I put the deed copy, the case number sticky, and the spiral notebook in the folder Ellen gave me. I opened the door. The hallway smelled like coffee and cleaning fluid. A volunteer pushed a cart of paperbacks past me and smiled without asking for my story. I appreciated that. I walked to the small meeting room. Harold waited outside with the rolled property map under his arm like a flag. He nodded once. We didn't shake hands. We didn't need to. Inside, a woman with a clipboard stood and introduced herself as the county reviewer. She was calm, neutral, and all business. Ellen sat in the corner, ready but not in the way. Maria hovered in the hall, not crossing the line, but near. The reviewer explained the process in 2 sentences. I answered her first 3 questions without thinking. My name. The day. Where I was. Then she asked me to tell her what I wanted and why. I want my key to my house, I said. I want to decide where I live. I understand that I fell, and I understand there are risks. I also understand that my house was sold to a company linked to my son's partner, and I did not agree to that. I want my decisions to be mine. She wrote, nodded, and asked about the signature. I put my signature sample and the deed copy side by side on the table and tapped the dotted I. I don't dot my I said. I haven't since 1971. She looked closely. Noted, she said. She asked if I could identify how much the home sold for, and I said, $480,000. She asked what the monthly facility draw was, and I said, around $8,000, according to Mark. Saying his name in that room made my chest pull tight and then release. It was a small kind of bravery I didn't plan. She ran a small cognition screen, then closed her notebook. Thank you, she said. We'll file our report with the Ombudsman's office. They'll contact the listed agent and the facility. When? I asked. Soon, she said. We move faster than you expect, and slower than you want. Honest, I respected that. She left with a polite nod. Ellen gathered the papers and slid them back to me. Harold put a hand on my shoulder and squeezed once. Maria stepped in and replaced my empty water cup with a fresh one. Neither of them said anything. It was better that way. Talk can cheapen a clean moment. I walked back to my room with the folder under my arm. The air felt clear. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket, and the caller ID did what it does when the person on the other end thinks he can still steer the truck. Mark. He didn't even wait for hello. If an audit starts, the buyer walks, he said, tight. Dad, you need to understand this could ruin the plan. You already told me your plan, I said. Now here's mine. What plan? He asked, cautious. Light, I said. Paper. My name without your hand on it. He tried to speak. I let the silence do my work for once. In that gap, something shifted. Maybe in him. Definitely in me. I ended the call without a goodbye and set the phone face down on the tray. Then I slid the folder under my palm and felt the cool push of paper against my skin. That was when the nurse slipped a pink message slip under my door. It had 4 words and a case number in neat print. Ombudsman case opened today. The Ombudsman case number sat on the pink slip like a small anchor. By noon, the facility phone rang for me and the front desk slipped another message under my door. Guardianship review requested. Pending scheduling. Those were just words, but they moved the ground. I set the slip beside the deed copy and the spiral notebook. I touched each one in turn until my hands calmed. Paper steadied me. It always had. Ellen came in with her folder and sat without ceremony. They asked for a packet, she said. I'll include the Maple Road deed, the notary mismatch on Mark's new forms, your capacity screen notes, and Harold's photo of the sold sign. We'll request a hearing at probate court. We need one clean ask. What's the ask? I said. Temporary suspension of Mark's authority until they verify your capacity, she said. Then a full review. Good, I said. My voice stayed even, but I felt a small rush. I was past asking permission. I was notifying. She slid a single page toward me. This is a simple declaration. You're saying in your own words what you want. I read it. I want my key back, it said in cleaner language, and that was enough. I signed with my undotted I. The pen scratched a little. It sounded honest. Also, she said, a local station has a series on elder financial cases. I can tip them after we file. They won't run anything without your permission. Do it, I said. Light doesn't hurt honest people. She watched my face to be sure I wasn't bluffing. I wasn't. Shaming me in a dining hall on my birthday had already happened. The worst part was over. If you've stood in a DMV line with a number that never moves, you know the anger. Getting a case number was like watching the screen finally blink. Maria hovered in the doorway, then stepped in with a small stack of copies. She re-anchored herself by the tray and put them down. For your folder, she said, and I wrote the case number on top in big print. Thank you, I said. I meant the words. People who show up with paper when you need it become family, even if their badge says something else. We met in the little meeting room by the lobby to organize everything. Ellen laid out the deed copy, the printouts, Harold's photo, and a fresh sheet for notes. She moved like a person who had practiced staying calm in other people's storms. We'll also want your social security card on file, she said. I pulled a copy. The signature angle helps. I held the card case. The plastic had a crack on the corner. I felt the old pride hit me. That card had kept the lights on when the world pretended not to see me. It still did. Tomorrow I'll file at probate court, she said. We'll likely get a date within a week. Probate moves fast when there's control at stake. Fast, I said. Dry. Government's favorite word. She gave me a small look. Faster than you expect, slower than you want. You already know the line. We wrapped up and I walked the hall to burn off nerves. I counted doors and listened to the wheels of the laundry cart. My mind kept grabbing the same two threads, my son and my key. I had loved Mark with my whole life, from the first time he fell asleep on my chest, and I was afraid to breathe too loud. Somewhere between then and Maple Row, I had missed a turn. You can love a person and still mark the line they can't cross. I'd been late drawing mine. In the afternoon, a nurse told me the front desk had a visitor. Harold stood there with his old cap and a tube under his arm. He lifted it like a trophy. Property map, he said. From the city archives. Got it printed at the hardware store. Guy there still remembers you buying screws one at a time. Because there's no reason to leave with a bag you won't use, I said. Going back and forth with Harold took some of the sting out of my chest. We sat in the meeting room again. Harold unrolled the map and smoothed it with his hands. Lot lines, our street name, the small rectangle that was my yard. Seeing the shape on paper pulled me into a memory before I could stop it. The porch again. But this time it was 1993 and Mark was 16, taller than his mother, shoulders starting to look like a man's. I had given him his first key. He spun it on a ring and grinned like a person who just learned how to drive. Don't lose it, I'd said. He had said, I won't, Dad, and for once, there was no argument in his voice. I felt the weight of the key in my palm now, like it was still there. That memory warmed me and hurt me in the same breath. It made today matter more. That corner, Harold said, tapping the map, unaware of the detour my head had taken, shows your boundary to the alley. City kept the easement. If a survey was done before the sale, there should be a record. Ellen can ask for it. Ellen nodded. Good catch, she said. If there's no survey, and they represented there was one, that's one more small crack. I felt a small mean bit of humor flicker. Lots of small cracks make a sidewalk you shouldn't walk on, I said. Exactly, Ellen said. At 3:10 p.m., my phone rang with a local number. I answered. The probate clerk spoke in a neutral way, like she was reading from a grocery list. Guardianship reviews set for July 15, 2025 at 9 a.m. Judge's calendar is tight, but they added you. Notice will be emailed and mailed. Thank you, I said. I wrote the date on the spiral notebook and circled it. My hand went steady and slow. A date on paper makes a person real again. The minute I hung up, the screen lit with Mark. I didn't want to take it. I did anyway. If you don't accept certified letters, they come back with fees. Dad, he said, voice already up a notch, why are you dragging this to probate court? Because probate court is where guardianship lives, I said. They gave us July 15th, 2025 at 9 a.m. You can't be serious, he said. That's in 2 weeks. You'll confuse people. Maple Row will be spooked. The care plan. Stop, I said. My voice came out clean, not loud. Say Maple Row one more time and listen to yourself. He swallowed. I could hear it through the phone. We're family, he said. I'm trying to consolidate and protect. Do you want me to look like a thief in public? You took my house without asking, I said. We're past looking. He blew air into the phone like a man trying to blow out a candle that wouldn't quit. Lisa says you're being pushed by staff, he said. Who's feeding you this? Lisa can ask me herself, I said. I'm telling you plainly. July 15th, 2025 at 9 a.m. He switched tactics. We'll bring everything, he said. The consent forms, the trust documents, the facility notes. The evaluation shows you needed care. Bring your notary's commission number 2, I said. Silence. He knew what I meant. He masked it fast. You're playing gotcha, he said. No, I said. I'm playing, that's my name. Dad, you're gonna hurt yourself, he said. All this stress. Be reasonable. I looked at the map, at the little box that was my lot, at the way the lines met like they knew where they belonged. I'm being reasonable for the first time in months, I said. He hung up. Not even a goodbye. The call screen went to black. I felt both lighter and sadder. I wanted to put my hand on his head like when he was 5 and tell him to try again. But he wasn't 5. He was 52 and standing on my porch with a deed that didn't belong to him. There's no pat for that. Ellen watched my face. He'll escalate, she said. Expect an email. Let him write, I said. Words leave tracks. We spent the next hour making a checklist. Ellen handled filings. Harold promised to be there early with his map tube. Maria said she would walk me to the car the day of and make sure the facility wrote, resident out for appointment, correctly. It made me laugh a little, because that line always looked so simple on charts and so hard in real life. Around 5 p.m., the local station called. A reporter asked, polite and cautious, if I wanted to share my story on camera outside the courthouse on the day. He said they were doing a series on seniors and signatures. That phrase made me grin for 1 second. Seniors and signatures. Probably tested well in a meeting. I don't want a circus, I said, but I want the light. I'll talk after the hearing, not before. Understood, he said. We'll be there. I sat with that for a minute. If you ever thought you'd hate attention until the day attention was the only tool left, you know the taste in my mouth. It wasn't pride. It was relief. Sunlight stops mold. Dinner came. The tray rattled. I ate enough to keep my head from floating. Then I pulled out the spiral notebook and wrote 3 lines in big letters for the hearing. 1. I want my key to my house. 2. I understand the risk of living alone. 3. I did not authorize the sale to Maple Row LLC. Simple. Clean. I practiced saying them without rushing. I set the notebook on the table and took a breath. My chest loosened a notch. Tom texted after dark. Mark's mad. He says you're going to embarrass him. Tom, I wrote, this isn't about embarrassing Mark. It's about me living in my house. He texted back a single word. Okay. That, okay, looked like a folding chair he didn't know how to unfold. I wanted to help. I couldn't do it for him. Night brought that old ache in my legs. I adjusted the pillow and the oxygen tube. The hallway lights through lines under the door. I thought about the first time I showed Mark how to change the porch light, how he had reached up and pretended he didn't need the stool. He did, but he wanted to jump. I held the stool steady, and kept a hand near his back without touching. Then I walked inside and let him have his moment. He'd loved me for the invisible hand. Now he acted like the hand never existed. That wasn't true. The body remembers balance even if the mouth forgets it. Morning came fast. Ellen showed up after 8 a.m. with printed notices. She set one on my tray like a small flag. Notice of hearing, it said at the top. July 15, 2025 at 9 a.m., Division 3. 1 page. Big type. No poetry. My favorite kind of document. We went over roles. I'll speak first, she said. Then you. If Mark tries to steer, the judge will stop him. Use simple sentences. No speeches. I can do simple, I said. I've been married. I learned. Ellen cracked a real smile at that. Good, she said. At 9:30 a.m., I took a slow walk with my cane to the end of the hall and back. Maria met me halfway and turned around to walk beside me without talking. The quiet helped. She held the door while I went into the meeting room to practice sitting and standing without wobbling. You never think you'll rehearse that at my age. Pride loses to preparation every time. My phone buzzed on the table. Lisa, I answered. I wanted to give her a chance in her own voice. Dad, she said, soft. The way people talk when they're trying to make you put your armor down. Can we talk before this becomes something we can't undo? It's already something we can't undo, I said. We can only stop making it worse. Mark says you're going to accuse him, she said. Lisa, I said, I'm going to say what I want. I'm going to show the dotted I. He knows what he did. She was quiet. Then she said, will you look at him when you talk? That question caught me. It was small and human and painful. If he stands where I can see him, I said, I won't hide. I remember Mom's last Christmas, she said. You and Mark carried the tree in and didn't fight once. Then the needles fell, I said, trying to be gentle. We cleaned them up. We can clean this up too if we stop pretending the floor is clean. I hear you, she said. I believe she did. In the way people hear words and not yet the weight. I'll be there. After we hung up, I sat a minute and let that memory of a tree do what it wanted in my chest. It hurt. And it helped. You hold both if you're going to make it to the end without turning into a stone. The day before the hearing, Ellen brought me a plain shirt that didn't look like a uniform and a jacket that didn't look like a patient's. You'll feel better if you don't go in wearing their color, she said. She was right. Clothes shouldn't matter, but they do when people are deciding if you're a person. We planned the ride. The facility would log me out at 8:15 a.m., resident out for appointment. I almost asked them to write, to get his name back, but I kept that for my own notebook. I put the notice of hearing in the folder, with the deed copy, the map photo, and my 3 lines in big letters. I set the folder on the chair by the door so I wouldn't leave without it. I set the cane against the chair leg so I wouldn't try to be 25 walking out of principle. Late afternoon, the reporter called again to confirm. We'll wait outside the building, he said. No camera inside. Fine, I said. After, not before. After, he said. That evening, I walked my small loop again and paused at the bulletin board. The blue star with my name had curled up again. I pressed it flat. It sprang back. I tried not to read into it. I failed. Some things don't stay put until you staple them. I was bringing a stapler. Back in my room, I opened the spiral notebook and added a 4th line at the bottom. I want calls and visits without restriction. Small, but it mattered. If I won the house and they cut the phone, what was I winning? I slept in pieces. Every time I woke, I put a hand on the folder and felt the edge. That touch kept me from drifting into the old fear that no one would hear me. Morning broke like a light switch. I showered, shaved, and put on the shirt and jacket Ellen brought. I looked like a man going to a bank to fix a mistake, not like a patient being rolled somewhere. It helped. At 8 a.m., the front desk called to confirm the ride. I was ready. Maria appeared with a small paper cup of coffee and a look that said words would make it worse. I took the cup and nodded. We didn't need speeches. We had paper. As I rolled the chair forward to stand, my phone lit up with a voicemail notice. Mark. I didn't listen. I didn't want his voice in my head when I walked out the door. I slid the phone into my jacket and picked up the folder. The wait was right. Harold waited by the lobby doors with his map tube and a grin that showed a little tooth he never fixed on purpose. "Ready?" he asked. "As I get," I said. We moved toward the daylight. The automatic doors opened. The air hit my face. For 1 second I smelled cut grass, and it threw me to my porch again, to the day I gave Mark that first key. I swallowed. I kept walking. In the parking lot, a car door slammed. Mark stepped out in a navy suit, with the fast walk of a man late to his own version of the truth. He cut across the asphalt and landed in front of me like security. "Dad," he said, lower now, controlled, the tone he used with clients, "we can still stop this. Walk back inside. We'll sort it out." "You already sorted it," I said. "You sold my house." He glanced at Harold, then at Ellen behind me. He lowered his voice even further. "If you do this, you will ruin me with my partners," he said. "Maple Row will pull lines. I will have to answer to people who don't care that you fell." There it was. Not about my safety, not about my care, about his partners, about lines. The words didn't stab. They clarified. The person in front of me was not the boy counting screws with me at the hardware store. He was a man counting me as a screw he could turn. "Good," I said. Calm. Then they can hear me too. He stared at the folder in my hand and reached toward it like he could take a hot pan without a glove. Ellen stepped closer, and he let his hand fall. "You always were stubborn," he said. "You bet," I said. "That's why I'm still here." He smiled in that way that didn't touch his eyes. "You'll regret this," he said. "I regret not drawing the line sooner," I said. "You don't get to sell what isn't yours." A horn beeped in the lane. The transport car pulled up. Maria held the door like a guard. Harold gripped my elbow steady as I stepped off the curb. We got in. Mark stood there with his suit and his words and watched the car door close. He looked small through the glass. I didn't enjoy it. I just didn't hate it. As the car rolled out, my phone buzzed. A text from Lisa. "We're on our way. I'll sit behind you." That line warmed something I thought was done. Maybe she wanted to see my shoulders. Maybe she wanted to make sure I didn't shake. Either way, I took it. The driver asked for the address. Ellen gave it. Probate Court, July 15th, 2025 at 9 a.m. She repeated the time like a person setting a combination lock. I took one slow breath and rested the folder on my lap. The corner touched my wrist. It was cool. It steadied me. We turned onto the main road. The courthouse clock was already in view down the avenue. The minute hand moved. It always did. I watched it and felt my heart do a slower thing. Not rush, not fear. Readiness. The kind you feel when you've walked a route so long you could do it in a storm. We stopped at a light. My phone vibrated with one new email. Subject line from Mark. "Last chance." I didn't open it. I slid the phone face down and looked out at the courthouse steps. Clean stone. Wide. Room for cameras and for walking out with my head up. I knew what I needed to do next, because I had written it last night, in big letters. I spoke it to myself in the car like a man practicing at a sink. "I want my key. I understand the risk. I did not authorize Maple Row. No more apologies for taking up space. No more asking to be asked." The car pulled into the drop-off lane. The driver put it in park. Ellen checked her watch and nodded once. Harold handed me the map tube. Maria touched my shoulder and then moved back. For a second, everything in me went still, like the half-breath before you knock. Then the front door of the courthouse opened, and a reporter stepped out with a camera on his shoulder. He didn't lift it. He waited. I liked that. He would get his shot later. For now, the only shot that mattered was the one I was about to take. I stepped out of the car with my cane and my folder and put both feet on the ground. The morning air felt clear. The stone under my shoes felt steady. I took the first step toward the doors and didn't look back. They called my case in probate court, and I stood with my cane and my folder and felt my heartbeat settle into a slow, steady count. The room had rows of wooden benches, a clock that didn't lie, and a judge who looked like he'd seen every kind of family pride walk in and try to act like love. Mark sat 2 rows over in a navy suit. Lisa was behind me, hands clasped like Sunday service. Tom kept his eyes on the floor. The reporter waited near the back, camera lowered. I didn't look at him. I looked at the bench and at the sheet of paper on top of my folder. 3 lines in big letters. I want my key. I understand the risk. I did not authorize Maple Row. Ellen stood at my side and anchored the file on the podium. She spoke first, plain and calm. Your Honor, we're here on July 15, 2025 at 9 a.m. on a petition to suspend authority under a power of attorney and review capacity. We ask for a temporary order so Mr. Miller can make his own decisions until the review finishes. She had a voice like a level on a toolbox. It told you when the bubble was off. The judge nodded. Let's keep this short, he said. I've read the packet. I see a deed to Maple Row, LLC with a signature Mr. Miller disputes. I see a capacity screen from July 2, 2025. I see a notary commission irregularity on a recent consent form. Ellen didn't move. Yes, Your Honor. Mark's attorney stood. He had that easy smoothness some men learn in rooms where everyone else has to ask to speak. Your Honor, my client, Mark Miller, has acted within his authority under the power of attorney for his father's benefit. Care costs are high. The trust pays for necessary care. The sale to Maple Row, LLC ensured liquidity. The judge held up a hand. We'll get to liquidity. First, I want to hear from Mr. Miller himself. He looked at me. Sir, can you step to the microphone? I walked to it. The cane ticked once on the floor. I set the folder down and kept my 3 lines at the top, where my eyes could land if my hands forgot their job. Your Honor, I said, I want my key to my house. I want to decide where I live. I understand I fell. I understand there are risks. I did not authorize the sale to Maple Row, LLC. The judge watched me for a breath. I didn't stumble. I didn't dress the sentence up. I felt simple and clean, like putting a letter in the right box. He turned to Ellen. Show me the signatures. She placed 2 sheets on the bench, the deed copy and a prior signature from my file here at the facility. She angled them with care. Mr. Miller signs without dotting the I. His M is sharp. The deed signature shows a dotted I and rounded M. The notary is out of county, and the notary journal has not been produced. Mark's attorney moved in a small step. Handwriting varies, Your Honor. Age, illness, counsel, the judge said. I am aware people's hands shake. Dots don't walk onto letters on their own. He glanced at me. Mr. Miller, what do you remember about June 12, 2025? Oxygen, I said, and a nurse telling me I was lucky to be breathing without the machine on level 3. My chest tightened and eased at the memory. I kept going. I don't remember a deed. I do remember my porch. I rebuilt it. I didn't sell it. The judge turned back to Ellen. The capacity screen? Ellen handed up the form from July 2, 2025. Mr. Miller knew his location, date, family members, and the effect of a sale. He described risks of living alone and could name monthly costs. Mark's attorney tried again. Your Honor, even if capacity is present now, it wasn't in February when the document was signed. Then we don't give away his July for a February that's convenient, the judge said, voice even. He turned to me again. Do you understand the risks if you return home? Yes, I said. I could fall. I could forget a pill. I could need a neighbor. The judge nodded once. Neighbors are still in business in this county. He sat back. Show me the video mentioned in your filing. Ellen lifted a tablet and set it on the evidence cart. The reporter kept his camera down. The judge leaned forward and watched. There I was, on the day in question, in my room, voice rough but clear, saying, I do not give anyone permission to sell my house. Maria had held the phone steady. I had signed a note under it with my sharp M and my undotted I. Watching it now, in this room, I felt that same small heat in my chest. Not anger. Proof. Mark's attorney objected, something about foundation, but the judge waved him down. I'm not ruling on damages today, he said. I'm ruling on control. The video goes to that. The judge turned to Mark then. He re-anchored him with a calm stare. Mr. Miller, who owns Maple Row, LLC? Mark shifted. A partner of mine, he said. It's a holding entity. Standard practice. The judge's eyebrows went up a notch. Standard practice for whom? Sons buying their father's house through a partner to manage care? He let the question sit like a weight. Why not list it on the open market if the goal was liquidity? It would have taken longer, Mark said. The facility bills are high. Medicare doesn't cover everything. I had to move. You had to call, I said, before I could stop myself. Ellen touched my elbow, a quiet reminder to let the judge do the talking. I shut my mouth. It felt good anyway. Some words deserve daylight. The judge looked at the deed again, then at the notary notation on the recent consents. Explain this notary commission number, counsel, he said to Mark's attorney. The attorney glanced at a paper, then back at the judge. We will provide the journal entry. We don't have it in hand. You filed forms with a notary whose commission appears expired, the judge said. If I'm wrong, I'll hear it with the journal entry. But if I'm right, you have a problem that isn't Mr. Miller's age. He leaned forward. Here's my ruling for today. Authority under the power of attorney is suspended effective immediately, pending full review. The Ombudsman's Office and this court will appoint a temporary independent guardian for financial matters only. Mr. Miller will retain personal decision-making, including where he lives, subject to a home safety check within 72 hours. All transfers from the trust are frozen pending audit. Maple Row, LLC is ordered to produce its purchase documents, financing, and closing files within 10 business days. I felt my fingers tighten on the cane and then loosen. Relief came like a steady breath after a long wait in a hot line. Lisa made a small sound behind me. Tom exhaled like he'd been holding his breath since February. Mark looked at the table and then at the ceiling. Then fixed his eyes on his attorney like he could find a new answer in that face. The judge wasn't done. Mr. Miller, he said to me, do you have a plan if you return home? People, equipment, anything that lowers risk. Yes, I said. My neighbor Harold will check on me mornings. I'll hire a home aide 3 afternoons a week. I'll put grab bars where the old man who used to live there forgot to put them. That line made him smile, just a little. I let it. Humor was not forbidden here. It just had to be clean. Good, he said. File that plan through the temporary guardian by Friday at 4 p.m. He tapped the bench once. Next date will be set for the audit status in 2 weeks. That was it. The gavel didn't even land. People shuffled like they do when the thing they came to see ended before their popcorn. The reporter lifted the camera but kept it low. Ellen squeezed my arm. We'll get the order in writing by the end of the day, she said. You did fine. I looked at Mark. He was already talking fast to his attorney, hands cutting the air. He glanced at me once, and for a split second, I saw the boy at the hardware store again. Then he looked away. That hurt. Not like a wound, like a tired joint. It would never be young again. We stepped into the hall. The reporter moved closer, careful. Mr. Miller, he said, can I get a statement? I kept my voice even. I said what I needed to say to the judge, I said. I want my key. I'll have a comment after the home check. He nodded and turned to Ellen for details. She handled him like she handled forms. Polite, specific, no extra words. Harold stood beside me with the map tube like a lance he didn't need to use. Lisa came forward then and touched my sleeve. Dad, she said, I'm here. I know, I said. I didn't have anything else that wasn't going to make her cry in a hallway. She understood. She stepped back. Tom came next. He stood there with his mouth half open, then closed it and said the only sentence that mattered. I'll help with the bars. Good, I said. My chest warmed a notch. It wasn't forgiveness. It was a start. Outside, the air felt cooler than it had an hour ago. Reporters hovered near the steps, but none of them blocked my path. The man with the camera asked for a shot of me holding the folder. I let him. If it helped someone else's father say no to a dotted I, they could have it. We drove straight to my house for the safety check with the temporary guardian. The order had gone from the judge's screen to someone's fax to someone's email, faster than I could say, mailroom. The guardian met us there with a clipboard and a calm face that said she'd seen worse kitchens than mine. The porch had a faint scrape where the sold signpost had been pulled out. I noticed it and felt the old hurt flare and fade. The door still knew my hand. Inside, the house smelled closed up and a little sweet, like dust and old wood and a bowl that used to hold apples. I walked slow, touching the back of the couch, the edge of the table, the wall where my wife had hung a row of small frames and once told me I had no eye for straight lines. She had been right. I used a level anyway. The guardian went room to room making notes. Bathroom needs 2 bars, she said. Stairs need a rail on the left, too. Throw rugs should go. Throw rugs will go, I said. They threw me once already. She gave a neutral smile. A homemade 3 afternoons a week will be sufficient if you follow the plan and check in daily with a neighbor. I'll file approval today. Harold walked the kitchen like a man casing a job. We'll add a rail by this step, he said, and a non-slip mat. Easy. Mark didn't come. He texted Lisa something I didn't want to read. She kept her phone in her pocket and helped me move a chair closer to the window. When the guardian finished, she handed me a printed approval sheet. Effective today, she said. Congratulations. Congratulations felt strange for simply getting back what had been mine, but I took it. Relief turned to a quiet hum inside me. I stood in my living room and breathed like a person released from a too-tight belt. We set to work that afternoon. Harold measured, drilled, and set bars like he was hanging flags. I made coffee that tasted like freedom and cardboard at the same time. Maria stopped by on her break with a bag of groceries, she said. Someone left at the front desk. No one. Leaves. Ground coffee and eggs at a front desk by accident. I didn't argue. The phone rang twice with unknown numbers. I let them go. The third call was the bank. The trust accounts were frozen by court order. I didn't smile, but the corners of my mouth tried. By evening, the house looked like a place a stubborn man could live without showing off. The porch had a fresh rail. The bathroom had bars where pride couldn't argue anymore. Lisa found the old key bowl and set it back on the entry table. It looked right there. I set my cane next to it and stood for a second, just being a person in his own hall. The next morning, the independent guardian called to confirm the homemade schedule and the check-in plan with Harold. She sounded relieved, like she liked filing approval sheets more than incident reports. I told her I shared the feeling. 2 days later, the written court order arrived. The language was dry and perfect. Suspension of authority, audit of trust transfers, production of Maple Row documents. It said things out loud that had been whispered. Ellen sent me a copy by email and brought a hard copy to the house. I slid it into a manila folder and labeled the tab with a pen. My hand didn't shake. The audit moved like a freight train uphill, loud, slow, unstoppable. Calls came from people who spoke in short, careful sentences. The bank froze lines. Mark's partner requested a call with the guardian and Ellen. They asked for time. The guardian gave them dates and no sympathy. I didn't have to do anything but answer the door when the homemade knocked and make coffee for Harold when he came to measure another rail. Doing nothing on purpose is a skill I wish I'd learned earlier. 1 week after the hearing, the local station ran the story. They used my name because I told them to. They showed the porch rail and my 3 lines on a notepad. No faces besides mine. The anchor said, "Older adults," like he meant it, not like a category. They put a hotline number at the bottom of the screen. The camera caught me on the porch with my cane and the light just turning on. I didn't perform. I told the truth. After they left, the neighbor across the street brought over a pie and didn't talk about it. Best kind of support. The audit report landed with a phone call and an email the next week. Ellen sat at my table while I read. It said Maple Row LLC had ties to Mark's partner beyond a holding role. It said 2 transfers from the trust looked like business capital injections, not care payments. It said the notary commission on the new consents was expired as of last year. The words were clean. They didn't accuse, they didn't need to. Ellen tapped a line with her pen. "This triggers restitution," she said. "They'll calculate. It won't make you rich. It will make the books right. The court will likely void the deed." Maple Row can either accept rescission or fight uphill. "I don't want rich," I said. "I want my porch." "You got it," she said, and for once she smiled without keeping a lid on it. The next hearing was quick. The judge read the audit summary, looked at Mark, and said words I didn't expect to hear in my lifetime. Deed rescinded. Title restored to Frank Miller. Restitution amount to be set after accounting. Temporary guardian remains for financial oversight 60 days. No speech, no moral. Just the law doing what it should do on a decent Tuesday morning. Mark looked like a man learning gravity is not a rumor. He turned to me in the hall later and tried a different tone. Soft, weighted with a kind of hurt that might have been real, or might have been the sound of a plan burning. "Dad," he said, "I was trying to hold it together." "I know," I said. "You held it without asking whose it was." He nodded once, eyes red and dry, and walked away. Lisa hugged me. Tom shook my hand like a man who finally understood it wasn't a test. Back home, I set the court order in the folder under the notice and the deed copy. The stack had become a small history of a man keeping his name. I looked around the living room and felt something I hadn't felt in a year. The quiet that comes when a fight ends without police or shouting, just paper and a steady voice. Life didn't turn into a commercial. Bills still came. The home aides still knocked 3 afternoons a week. I cooked eggs badly and laughed about it. Harold came over with a wooden sign he'd carved for my garage. Old Mail Co. We set up a small workbench and started fixing mailboxes for neighbors who paid in coffee, cash, or stories. It wasn't a business plan. It was a way to stand in my own yard and not be a client. 2 weeks after the deed was restored, a padded envelope showed up with no return name. Inside was my old spare key on a ring with a tiny brass eagle. I knew the ring. I'd bought it at the post office gift counter in 1998. There was a note on a torn sheet of legal pad. Found this in a box. No signature. I held the key and let my chest ache in a way that felt good. I set it in the bowl by the door, next to my cane tip, like a person who came home from a long route. If you're waiting for me to say I forgave everyone and we sat for a Sunday dinner, that isn't what happened. Lisa came by with soup and didn't defend Mark anymore. Tom helped me fix a hinge and said he was sorry without trying to make me say, "It's okay." Mark stopped by once with his eyes softer. He asked if I needed anything. I told him I needed honesty. He nodded and said he'd try. We'll see. Trying is cheap. Following through is where the price shows up. I stand on my porch most mornings now and drink coffee that tastes like cardboard and victory. The rail is solid under my hand. The house knows me. I know it back. When people ask me how it feels, I don't give them speeches. I show them the key in the bowl and the 3 lines in my notebook. I gave a quote to the reporter the day the deed came back. They thought I'd forget my own address. Old men forget lots of things. Not that. If you think this kind of quiet fight matters, save this, or send it to someone who needs a little push to draw their line. Paper and voice. That's the kit. Use it. Thanks for listening to my story. If you enjoyed it, hit like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments. To hear what happens next, just click the box on the right. Thank you for watching.